Hey everybody, it's Dr. Karen, and today I wanted to talk about the School of Clinical Leadership Pillars for Success. So, the School of Clinical Leadership is a program that is launching in September that is designed to help pediatric therapists be better leaders so that they can make a bigger impact on their caseload. And there are actually going to be 4 pillars of success that are going to be emphasized in the program. And I wanted to talk a little bit about them today and why I've set it up the way that I have. So, if you want more information about the School of Clinical Leadership, then definitely get on the waiting list. You can do that by going to drkarendudek-brannan.com/leadership. But for now, I'm going to go through the success pillars and talk about what is covered in the program. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about how it's covered. So there are 4 primary areas that I am going to emphasize in this program. So the first part is service delivery design. So when it comes to planning for therapy, I get a lot of questions about, people usually ask the question of what do I do in my therapy session? So what are the strategies that I should use when I have a student or a client or clients in front of me? What are my actual treatment techniques? Obviously, this is really important. Everyone has their individual discipline, their area of expertise, whether they're a school psychologist, a social worker, a speech pathologist, OT, or other interventionist. And so this is really important to know your area of focus. But the thing is that a lot of those therapists, any of those disciplines that I've mentioned, obviously have a lot of time constraints. Anybody who is serving K-12 kids knows that there is, you can never get to all of the things that you want to in your sessions. So a lot of times you have to get really creative when it comes to making sure that your clients have the right support across settings, because we would love to be able to see our clients more, have more therapy time with them, cover more with them, and then also be able to, follow them around and make sure that we're providing the support that they need across settings and be able to provide that scaffolding in other situations. But we obviously can't clone ourselves and do that. So we have to get creative about the ways that we provide that support. So that's why we start with service delivery design. When it comes to figuring out what you need to do in your therapy sessions, regardless of your discipline, and also when it comes to just figuring out the most efficient way for you to spend your time in therapy, and then how to make sure that you get the client the support that they need across settings, we have to think about the big picture first. So really, instead of asking the question, what should I be doing in therapy? What we really should be asking is, what kind of support does my client need? And how do I make sure that they get it? So that's why we start with service delivery design and not therapy planning first. So what this means is that we want to think about the big picture of how that service delivery plan works when it comes to the supports and services that the student is getting, and then all of the environmental supports that they have in place already, all of the resources that they have. And we want to think about all of those things and what everybody else is doing before we think about what we're doing. And many times, if you are a clinician, you might be in a case where you're a case manager, or you might be in a situation where you have a student who you just know that the services are really disjointed and no one is taking a leadership role and trying to integrate things. You can be that person, even if you aren't the official leader. Many times I had to do this when I was a school clinician. It's not that people weren't doing their jobs. It's just that everybody's busy. It's easy for things to fall through the cracks. You can be that person that takes that leadership role and kind of integrates things together. But in order to do that, you have to think about service delivery from a broader sense. What is everybody else doing to support this student? And then you can decide what you're doing. One perfect example of this is that I would often do this with special ed teachers or social workers. When I was in the school as a speech pathologist, we would have to get together and figure out what all that student needed. And then I could decide what I was doing in my sessions. And then I could also decide, okay, what information does the teacher need? What information does the parent need? Do they have a private therapist outside of the school setting? But what I actually did in my sessions was informed by what the other people were doing. And that looked different case by case. So we start with service delivery design first. And what that can help you do is create a more cohesive service delivery plan for your students rather than just focusing on what am I doing, what worksheets am I doing, what are my therapy goals. And what that can also help you do is to engage in other activities besides direct therapy that make your services even more effective, like consulting, collaborating, training others, so that there might be some things that other people can reinforce, which frees up way more time for you to work on other things in your sessions. So the second pillar, we're talking about service delivery design first. And then once we get that big picture, we're going to talk about the second pillar, which is productivity. Now, if you are a therapist, you might think about, productivity requirements in healthcare settings. Obviously, that's something that could fall under that window of productivity. But what I'm talking about is just your overall schedule and how you spend your time. And what I aim to do with the productivity pillar is give you tools and protocols and strategies that are going to be assets for you. Those protocols and strategies are going to be things that might take you some time up front to create. So systems and processes, operating procedures that might take you time up front to create. But once they're created, you've invested that time and now you have good systems. That's going to be an asset that you've invested in that's going to give you back time. It's going to win you back time so that you can be more efficient to do other things. So really figuring out productivity and giving you a good system for that is going to be essential. So that is why productivity is the second pillar. And then we move on to the third and the fourth pillars, which are going to be really the most dynamic aspects of the program. Obviously, when it comes to service delivery and productivity, some of that's a little more straightforward, but with things like leadership and reform, those are topics that are kind of ongoing. So how that's going to work in the program is that there's going to be ongoing discussions about collaboration, leadership, and relationship building, as well as what we can do to make changes in our facilities and our communities. And that's going to be all about building relationships and collaborating with others. So the leadership reform piece is going to be really, really big because that is going to be key to having influence. A lot of times clinicians feel like they don't have the impact that they want. But what we're going to work on here is figuring out how to help them to work with others as a team, as well as build relationships that are going to help them to have more input and impact. And then obviously the fourth pillar is going to be really important as well, is all about evidence-based practices. So there's going to be a couple different ways that this is going to be handled in the program. Is that number one, obviously I am going to have some specific trainings on specific evidence-based practices, but this program is not for one specific discipline. This is a community that's going to help a number of different disciplines come together and be leaders all together. So when it comes to evidence-based practices, really what you want to be able to do in order to show up as a leader is be a good consumer of information. So we are going to have a number of different topics that are going to be cross-disciplinary under the area of evidence-based practices. But the other aspect of this is not just teaching you what to think and what you should know, but also strategies that can help you learn to think differently and be a good consumer of information. I will say that one specific topic that's going to be covered in depth in the evidence-based practices section is going to be surrounding executive functioning, because that is one area that pretty much overlaps across everybody's area, cross-disciplinary. That's really something that everybody needs to be embedding into their work, no matter what discipline they are, whether it's in the classroom, regardless of the type of therapy that you're doing. That's something that you're going to need to be emphasizing, whether you are training others to provide support in this area or whether you're actually addressing it directly in your sessions. That's going to be something that's key that everybody needs to know. So that is going to be one specific topic that's going to be covered, but the others are going to be dynamic and ongoing. So these are the pillars for success that are going to be covered in the School of Clinical Leadership. This is going to be a learning community. So there are going to be some specific trainings, but it's not going to be a course where, there's just a lecture format. There are going to be some videos and trainings, but really what it's going to be about is community and collaboration as well. So the trainings will be there, but really the program is also going to be about ongoing discussions and roundtables that are going to help you to actually implement the trainings. So there's going to be more information in the coming weeks about what is involved in the program and when it's going to be open. So if you are a speech pathologist, social worker, school psychologist, occupational therapist, any other type of interventionist or professional who is responsible for providing specialized services for school-age kids, then I invite you to check out the waiting list for the School of Clinical Leadership. Again, to get on the waiting list, all you need to do is go to drkarendudek-brannan.com/leadership. Again, that's drkarendudek-brannan.com